When it comes to me and watching plotlines in anime and noticing the overarchingness of them, there are several different types that I have noticed. First, you have your traditional one overarching story that concludes with the show or the season. I would give examples, but the majority of shows with any sort of overarching storyline fall under this category. The second type are shows with no overarching story at all and prefer to opt for more standalone episodes with a particular setting and particular characters. See atmospheric shows like Mushishi, comedy-focused shows like Fullmetal Panic Fumoffu, and slice of life a la Lucky Star. Finally, there are the types of plots that don't have one big overarching storyline, but rather a multitude of much smaller ones, each 2 to 6 plus episodes long that follow one after the other. These stories are usually referred to as arcs and are very popular in long-running shonen shows, due to the fact that they really do lend themselves to those kinds of shows that have hundreds of episodes with no end in sight. Because of this, however, it is very interesting to me to see that kind of thing in a kind of show like we're going to be looking at today. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, yet another entry into the I'm trapped in an MMO setting. Studio State Lights, Log Horizon. Let's jam! Now, you've probably heard this before, or something extremely similar to it, so bear with me. A group of people from a non-disclosed nationality have become highly involved in a massively multiplayer online role-playing game known as Elder Tale. 20 years after the game's launch, however, upon the release of the game's newest expansion, many players wake up to discover that they have been transported into the world of the game, with no screen in front of them and no way out. Now, we've seen this before. The .hack franchise is basically this in a bag of potato chips. And of course, who can forget last year's overly popular Sword Art Online? I remember that show like it was a year ago. And my thoughts on it can be summed up in 2 words. If you want more than that, I have a whole review and you can go find it and enjoy that too. But now, what makes Log Horizon so special? Well, for one, the setting is actually an MMO. But Arcada, you fashionably coat-wearing person, shows like Sword Art Online were set in an MMO. Well, yes, but in name only. When you have a MMO setting that could easily be replaced by any stereotypical fantasy setting without any actual game mechanics, it's not really an MMO now, is it? Sure, Sword Art Online's characters had a HUD and health bars, but beyond that, it didn't have much else. So what makes Log Horizon and the setting of Elder Tale so different, you ask? It's an MMO. Early on, we spent a good amount of time in the show showing that this world operates with the same mechanics of any standard MMO. Tanks, healers, support, all with abilities and powers that only make sense in this setting. We have NPCs, non-player characters, who take new form, which is important because while other shows ignore them completely for the most part, we have full-on supporting characters that are NPCs, but as this is a living, breathing world, they have become people, and something much more than empty shells that shout, "Welcome to Corneria! Welcome to Corneria! Welcome to Corneria!" Also, the show does away with one particular golden rule of anime. The one that states, people die when they are killed. Because in Log Horizon, you don't die. You simply respawn onto your local cathedral and are free to continue. But this simple thing brings in huge ramifications when you realize that now, our characters are immortal. So how does this change things? Well, considering that is a rather large plot point, I guess you're just going to have to go and find out for yourself. It's an adventure, isn't it? Now, what I consider to be best of all, though, is the goals of our characters. The goal of our characters, at least by the end of the first season, is not to get out. Too often, that is the sole goal with our characters, the driving force of the entire plot. We must get home. But that's kind of something that's always bugged me, particularly with this setting. Let me get this straight. You enjoy playing a game so much, and the addictiveness of MMOs is well documented, go Google it, that when you are trapped in it, all you want to do is get out? Like seriously, have you seen the real world? It's kind of shit here. So it's very satisfying to see that instead of constantly looking for a way to escape, our characters instead attempted to get accustomed to their new world and find whatever differences there are between it and the game they knew so well. This leads back to my original thought. Because the characters are not trying to get home, there is no overarching story, because if there was, that would be it. Instead, what we have is a series of short stories that have our characters trying to deal with new problems that arise in this world that they are sort of, but not really familiar with. In this way, it's very character-driven, which is cool, because since the show has a very large cast, we have so much time and so many characters to learn about, and this really is the meat of the show. Now, normally you might think that since characters in MMO settings happen to be rather stereotypical, that the characters in this show would also be. Can't really blame them either, especially in this case when we have a show that really does like to flaunt the fact that it has MMO mechanics. And while in some cases the characters like to stick to a particular role or quirk, to the show's credit, it's not usually the stereotypical choice. While I don't have time to go through every character in the show individually, we could at least take a moment to look at the main two. First is Shiroe, our protagonist. Shiroe does not follow the traditional fantasy protagonist role as the lone hero or the brave knight, but rather the skillful tactician. In-game, his abilities do not help him slay monsters, but rather assist his allies in doing so, which is quite refreshing. Personality-wise, he's like a kind-hearted Lelouch, or Light. I say this because in battle, he has the best plan to succeed, and those plans can be, well, rather ruthless. But while he is content to look like a villain to the general player base, those who know him personally see him as a very kind person who does his best to have the interest of his friends at heart. Then there is also Akatsuki, the stealthy rogue. She is a character who best embodies the spirit of role-playing. Instead of treating most of the world around her like the game everybody knows it to be, she instead gets deeply engrossed in her loyal ninja persona that, well, makes it kind of hard to tell what she is really like. She has several tsundere moments, most of the time though it's very light on the tsun and heavy on the dere, at least when Shiroe is involved anyway, as she truly does wish to care for her master in more ways than one. Beyond those two, the rest can be talked about with brief mentions. Naotsugu the tank and ever-loving doofus, Sorara the youthful healer, Nyanta the swashbuckling chef who bears a striking resemblance to the Baron from The Cat Returns, which, by the way, the Baron is like a badass, while also being a gentleman. He is something that we should all aspire to, and because I probably will never review The Cat Returns because Disney, I just wanted to get that out of the way. So, now that it is, and it is now pushed aside, let us continue. The young twins who are struggling to enjoy the game and become useful to others is Suzu the helpful bard, and of course, the flamboyant mage, Runderu Hasukodo. What I like about all these characters, and the ones that I didn't even get around to mentioning, is how, while some of them only get little screen time, in the grand scheme of things, you feel like you know them by the end of it. You feel like they are important instead of just some fluff development material while we wait for the next big plot twist to kick in. Which is, you know, something other shows could learn from. Now here is where I find that Log Horizon is slightly weaker to its other MMO-influenced counterparts. As far as animation goes, its major selling point is its stylization. It looks a lot more PG and all ages than something that's trying to be grim and dark. Scenes are also set up to not be battle intensive. Log Horizon instead takes a more top-down strategy approach to the whole thing, in that it likes to explain in more detail about the mechanics of the game and the world, and, you know, that lends itself to animation that doesn't need to be very flashy. And I suppose that leads into the opening song, Database. Gonna be honest, wasn't too much of a fan of this from the get-go. Heck, I think it was one of the major things that I had a problem with in the early episodes, but over time, like a lot of opening songs seem to do, it grew on me, to the point where I would be singing along with it as I watched the opening each week. And that's not something I would do with any other opening that has any musical hint of rap in it.
Here's how the story goes, we find out about a treasure in the Grand Line, there's no doubt. The pirate whose eye is on it, he'll sing, I'll be king of the pirates, I'm gonna be king. His name is Luffy, that's Monkey D. Luffy.
Yeah, no. The rest of the soundtrack is actually quite nice, with several tracks that just make the show and just stand out. Also, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Log Horizon has better music than Sword Art Online, which, if the mere saying of that doesn't blow your mind, let me put this into context. Sword Art Online was composed by Yuki Kadra, and I freaking love Yuki Kadra, so that should say a lot. If all you wanted to know about this series is whether or not it was better than SAO or the Dot Hack franchise, then go forth with the knowledge that I believe it to be so. It may not be as well animated as some of those shows, but Log Horizon is the first show that really nails home the MMO setting. And it just feels like a video game, which it should. The characters have personality, and they also have, screen time. Like, all of them. We're not just constantly focused on one character. The world just feels bigger and more complete, which really is all I wanted. It's all I wanted. Sure, its ending did not resolve anything per se, but again, there is no overarching storyline, and as I say this, there is an announced season 2, which I am very much looking forward to. And so, with all that in mind, I have meticulously calculated values for the categories of story, characters, animation, sound, and my own personal enjoyment, which after shoryukening it into the air and then asking for permission to do so after the fact, has me awarding Log Horizon with an overall score of 8.32 out of 10, and give it a rating for you to buy it rather than stream. If you have any interest in the MMO scene at all, whether it be playing in whatever new game that comes out onto the block, or perhaps being a longtime veteran of games like World of Warcraft or EverQuest, there is no reason why Log Horizon should not be the next series you pick up and watch if you have yet to do so. Those with no background in MMO mechanics might find the setting a bit confusing at first, granted, but the show does do a good job of explaining everything for those not in the know, which is helpful. At the time of this video, Log Horizon has been licensed by Sentai Filmworks, with the DVD release forthcoming. I hope. Thankfully, for those with less of a disposable income who happen to live in North America, Log Horizon is also available for legal streaming over on Crunchyroll if you happen to have access to that site. Also, as usual, if you click on the link in the description, glassreflection.net/Crunchyroll, you can sign up for a free trial of their premium services with all the anime awesomeness that it contains. Though full disclosure, you don't need premium to watch Log Horizon anymore, but it's still a nice thing to have for, when the second season comes along in the fall. For alternate anime recommendations, I point you towards... well, I could just do this very quickly by saying go watch Hack Sign and SAO, but honestly, I don't think I would ever tell a person that they had to watch either of those, so... here we go. Let's try Spice and Wolf for its equally large yet small world. And also Batum for making a highly enjoyable show about gaming that is, well, more Battle Royale than anything else. And, also doesn't happen to have an end unless they decide to make another season, but hey, still fun. Between those two, you should find something to your liking. And that's it for me. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.